Well, hello everyone. I'm Chase Keller from Chase Keller Journalism, and thank you guys so much for tuning in. In this video, I'm going over the 30th best team in the NFL and the 30th best team on my power rankings, the Chicago Bears. The Bears are a very interesting team because I can see them doing really well. I can see them getting the #1 overall pick, and that's all because a lot of these players are upside-based players. They're younger guys who have the potential to break out this year. I have 4 breakout grades on this team, and you'll see all 4 of them as we go through each position. So obviously last year the Bears had the #1 overall pick and ended up trading down, but what's most important is that they were the worst team in the NFL last year, and this year they're looking to make some big improvements to be able to possibly make the playoffs with the young quarterback in Justin Fields. So if you guys enjoy this video, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Comment down below if you agree with my ranking. We still have 29 more teams to rank. I have already ranked them, but you guys are going to have to wait until the end of the offseason to see who comes out at #1. If you are interested, please subscribe to the channel. And of course, I have to give a special shout out to that franchise guy. I do this every single episode. He inspired this series for me. He inspired to go deep into every team to make a rated power rankings, and that's what I'm doing for this series. So without further ado, here's why the Chicago Bears are the 3rd worst team in the NFL. So before we get into the specific positional groups, I'm going to go over each side of the ball and go over where the rating came from, what percentages got into this, and what ratings contributed to the final rating. So the offense received a 73.86, which comes out to 25th in the NFL, 12th in the NFC, and 3rd in the NFC North, only ahead of the Green Bay Packers. The defense came out at a 69.49, which is 30th in the NFL, 14th in the NFC, and 4th in the NFC North. The special teams came out at a 71.1, which is 24th in the NFL, 13th in the NFC, and 4th in the NFC North. And the coaching came out at a 75, which is tied for 23rd in the NFL, 11th in the NFC, and 4th in the NFC North. So let's get into the interesting stuff here. We're going to start with quarterback, which got a 74.8. And the thing with the quarterback room is that their starting quarterback is solely upside based for this upcoming season. Justin Fields is, of course, who I am talking about. This is a break it or make it season for Justin Fields. He has been getting some Lamar Jackson comparisons, some Josh Allen comparisons. I don't see that happening at all. I have him at a 76 overall right now. Of course, he has the chance to break out, but personally, I don't think it's going to happen. Coming into the 2021 NFL draft, I was not high on Justin Fields. He was actually my QB6 in the class, and I had an early 3rd round grade on him. The 5 QBs being better, I had Lawrence at 1, Trey Lance at 2, Zach Wilson at 3, Mac Jones at 4, and Kyle Trask at 5. But the thing with Justin Fields is he hasn't shown enough promise as a passer for me to believe in him. Yes, he has the upside to be a good passer. He has Lamar Jackson potential for all I know. But the thing is as a passer, he has not proven anything yet. He's made a couple really good passes here and there. We know he's got the arm talent, but he has not utilized it well enough in the NFL for me to like him. As for rushing, though, he did have over 1,100 rushing yards on 7.2 yards per carry and missed 38 tackles in 2022. But I don't think he's going to turn into that kind of like Lamar Jackson type player. As for his backup, PJ Walker, he is a very reliable backup, and I originally loved the pickup when he came out of the XFL. He came to Carolina, and he proved that he is that reliable backup if you need him to play a few games. I've never thought of him as a starter. Of course, he's only a 64 overall, but still, he's a good reliable backup, and he's great injury support, especially when your quarterback is Justin Fields, who is prone to injuries just because he's a running quarterback. As for the other guys on the roster, you have Nathan Peterman and rookie Tyson Bagent. Those guys did not contribute to the overall rating of 74.8, but they are still notable since they are on the roster. Let's move on to running back here. Running back got a 73.8, and running back overall is another very big upside-based position. Who knows how often the Bears are going to utilize their running backs when they have Justin Fields on the roster. The best running back on the roster is Khalil Herbert, and he is the first breakout player grade on this roster. My reasoning for that is because Herbert has always been impactful whenever he's on the field. He's receiving the ball constantly as a backup running back. We don't know how good he's going to work as a starter, but as a backup, he's always made an impact. He does have that big play appeal, which will help to get Justin Fields into the red zone if Fields can't move the ball down the field with his arm or even with his legs. Khalil Herbert is always making big plays. He can help get that ball to the red zone. And he does have 3-down back potential with both rushing and receiving abilities, but I doubt Chicago uses him all that much because they have D'Onta Foreman as their backup. They just picked up Foreman on a 1-year, $3 million deal, which in my opinion was a very solid pickup, noting the lack of depth that the team had at the time. But he also broke out last season with Carolina, and if he can continue that momentum, he could be the starter going into week 1. He had nearly 1,000 yards as well as 5 rushing touchdowns on the season last year, and yeah, may have been in a kind of terrible Carolina program, but he's still a very good running back. And that's my concern, is if D'Onta Foreman does come in and as momentum keeps up, you are digging into that playtime of Khalil Herbert, and of course you're going to want to do what's best for the team. That is going to ruin the heavy breakout potential that Khalil Herbert has. And you guys know how I mentioned the fact that D'Onta Foreman was a good pickup at the time. The draft pickup where they got Rashawn Johnson was not so great. At the time of the Foreman signing, they did not have a lot of running back depth. They picked up the running back depth with the signings of Foreman and Travis Homer. You didn't need to draft Rashawn Johnson, but in terms of talent value and where you selected him, which was in the 4th round, it's a very solid selection. As for Johnson, fans should expect that strong rusher. He's got good vision and really good reactionary movement, but his issue is that he is a very poor blocker and he struggles with general elusive movements in the open field. With that reactionary movement, though, he is really good at reading the play right as it's going to happen. As for the people who did not contribute to the 73.8 overall rating, we have the fullback, which I wanted to mention in Kari Blasingame, and the rookie in Robert Burns, as well as the other guy they picked up in Travis Homer and their 5th string running back, Treston Ebner. So the running backs do receive a 73.8 overall on the rating scale, and now you get into the best positional group on offense, and actually the best positional group on the entire team, and that is wide receiver, which going into last year, we would have not said this at all, but over 2022 and into the 2023 offseason, they have buffed up this wide receiver room, and it's very clear that Justin Fields now has the targets to work. So no more complaints from Bears fans, by the way. It starts with DJ Moore, who they picked up in that trade down from number 1 to number 9 with Carolina. This was an absolute fantastic trade pickup for Chicago. They already had won the trade off the picks. They got a 9th overall pick, the 61st overall pick, a 1st round pick in 2024, and a 2nd round pick in 2025 for the 1st overall pick. And I thought that was great compensation for the 1st overall pick, let alone they added on DJ Moore, who is literally a quarterback's best friend and will easily help out Justin Fields later into 2023 once they grow that chemistry. Moore is an extremely reliable wide receiver, and not many receivers can have as good as a scheme fit as DJ Moore has to Chicago. You have a developing passer, and now you're bringing in that reliable receiver where you can throw to him whenever you want. And that goes without mentioning that DJ Moore is still developing himself as he goes into his 6th season in the NFL. He's starting to peak a little bit as a wide receiver, but now he's with a new environment, and he hasn't really been in a great environment with Carolina. Behind him is Darnell Mooney, who the Bears drafted themselves in 2020. And considering his 2021 season, where he actually broke out as one of the better receivers in the NFL, 2022 was really disappointing. Yet he's still only in his 4th season, and he still can be a good wide receiver too. It's his first time being wide receiver 2 since his rookie season, so this may actually work out in the end for Darnell Mooney. He is a very speedy and shifty wide receiver that may contribute to what Bears fans are calling the Legion of Zoom. And yes, I agree, this team does have a lot of fast players on it. Then you get to Chase Claypool, who I've seen a lot of Bears fans give up on him. Do not give up on Chase Claypool just yet. Not only does Chase Claypool still have an elite combination of measurables and attributes, he's also shown flashes of greatness, not only with Pittsburgh, but also in his 1st season with Chicago. Yeah, the trade with Pittsburgh may have been a bit lopsided as you gave up the 32nd pick, which they got Joey Porter Jr. The problem with Chase Claypool is he does need to be a bit more consistent as an overall wideout. Some games he is really bad. Some games he shows those flashes of greatness. He just needs to be more consistent overall if he wants to be an impactful wide receiver 3 on Chicago. And then you got the two backups that contributed, and it starts with Equanimeous St. Brown, a 67 overall. He did play a career high in snaps last year with Chicago, which is really good because he showed his talent to a lot of guys who had no clue who he was before. And I was talking about Chase Claypool, how he's inconsistent. St. Brown is consistently okay, but because of that consistency, he may start over Chase Claypool. And then there's Tyler Scott, the rookie they just drafted in the 4th round, and I graded this pick an A. I absolutely loved the selection here. Scott has insane speed and shiftiness for a wide receiver. I do have him currently at kick returner, which we'll get into later, but Scott is more good injury support, and he actually has a lot of upside too as a wide receiver. We've seen how Tyreek Hill has succeeded in the NFL. Tyler Scott's game reminds me a lot of Tyreek's. Outside of those 5 receivers, these are the rest of the receivers on the team that did not contribute to the rating. Dante Pettis, Velus Jones Jr., Daurice Fountain, Simba Webster, Joe Reed, Tyrick Pitts, and Aaron Cruikshank. We are now moving on to tight end, which received the lowest grade on offense with a 68.9. The thing with the tight end room is it isn't really bad, it's just not good, and the 3rd string tight end just is not great whatsoever. The 1st string to me is a guy who has not proven his potential, and that is Cole Kmet. He's just played how I expected him to. I didn't have a lot of upside on him when I graded him at a mid-3rd round grade a couple years back, but he still hasn't shown what he can do for upside. He's just shown that he's consistent, but he's not great. Kmet should still work for Fields, though. Fields showed last season that he's not too reliant on his tight ends if he needs to throw a check down or a quick pass. He's more reliant towards the running backs and receivers for that. But Kmet still has that breakthrough potential that he had a couple years back as a prospect. I just don't see him hitting it. And then you have Robert Tonyan at a 68 overall. This was a very solid free agency pickup from Chicago. He came from Green Bay, who's their biggest rivals. You got him for 1 year, only $2.65 million, and he's just like Mooney, but in separate years. Tonyan had a breakout in 2020, but 2021 was a down year, and he continued to stay down for 2022, which is why he was signed for so cheap. I'm not expecting Tonyan to do great things in Chicago, but I'm still seeing him being that rotational piece if Cole Kmet maybe even goes down with injury. And then I was saying that 3rd string tight end isn't great. It is Chase Allen, and Chase Allen is honestly just injury support just in case someone goes down. I had an early 7th round grade on him last year. He ended up going undrafted, which is why I still like that 52, but he only played 2 snaps last year, but that pre-draft grade keeps him to be that tight end 3. Outside of him, there were 2 other tight ends that did not contribute to this rating, and that is Steven Carlson and Jake Tonjes. So tight end was the worst group on this team at a 68.9. And the offensive line here is the 2nd worst positional group on the offense with a 72.92. It's not great, but they definitely have built it to be better than it was last year, as well as younger guys continuing to develop and potentially become big pieces in this offensive line this year. It starts with my 2nd breakout player grade on this team with left tackle Braxton Jones. He was drafted in the 5th round last year, and I did have a mid-4th round grade on him, but he showed a lot of promise as a full-time left tackle starter last year. His pass blocking wasn't fantastic, and he did allow 7 sacks and 40 pressures on over 1,000 snaps, as well as having 12 penalties, but his run blocking was much better than his pass blocking, which may help reveal that upside that I mentioned about Khalil Herbert earlier, them being 2 of the breakout potential players that I have on this offense. Moving to the inside, you have Tevin Jenkins at left guard. I have him at a 72 overall, just like Braxton Jones. The thing with Tevin Jenkins, I didn't like the pick originally, but he actually showed that he can play and ball in 2022. He did only play 600-ish snaps, but still, he showed he can pass block, he showed he can run block, he showed he can just block all around. He is not athletic or elusive by any means, and he did have a big back concern coming into the draft, which ended up digging into his rookie season. But still, I like Tevin Jenkins now after that 2022 season. I just need to see more snaps from him and less injuries from him if we want a higher rating for him. In the middle of the line, I have Cody Whitehair, a very old veteran, but he's still very effective, and he's actually been having some really good seasons the last few years. Whitehair has never had a bad season by any means. He has had some like okay seasons or some average seasons, but he has not had a bad season at all. And he's had a few good seasons too. He's 30 years old. He's going to get older and older. That rating is going to drop because he's getting older. But Whitehair is still a very reliable and effective center. And also to note, he is the best offensive lineman rated on this roster. After that, we have a pickup from free agency in right guard Nate Davis. He played 4 years in Tennessee. 3 of those 4 years were really good, and suddenly he's stepping onto Chicago's O-line and immensely improving it. They got Nate Davis for 3 years, $30 million. And he is getting better and better as the seasons go by. Davis is very consistent. He's a good all-around blocker, especially good in the run, and he should easily contribute to, guess who? Khalil Herbert's breakout potential. But it also does really help Justin Fields rushing as well, as yeah, most of the time he's going to probably scramble out to the left, scramble out to the right, and go outside. But if he needs to take a step to the inside, Nate Davis is very aware, and he knows how he can block for Fields if Fields goes out and runs. But having Tannehill at quarterback the last couple of seasons has not helped at all. Tannehill's not very mobile in the pocket, so maybe Nate Davis will be tested in that situation. And at right tackle, they did just draft Darnell Wright with the 10th overall pick. And don't get me wrong, I was fine with Darnell Wright as a prospect. I just thought the 10th pick was a little bit high for him. I had an early second round grade. He was the 3rd best offensive tackle on the board at this time, Peter Skoronski and Broderick Jones being the 2 better ones. But Wright is still a very versatile option for that offensive line. If someone on the inside goes down, Darnell Wright can step in. If Braxton Jones goes down on the left side, I'm sure Darnell Wright will be able to gladly move over to left tackle and sub in for him. Versatility is very important for offensive linemen, which is why I loved Peter Skoronski so much, and I thought he would have been the better pick. But still, Darnell Wright is still bringing good versatility to the Bears offense, and hopefully he's very good at run blocking and pass blocking, will contribute to Fields' success next year. There are 3 backup offensive linemen that still contributed to the overall rating. They only showed for 10% of the overall rating all combined. Starts with Larry Borom, who is 5% of the final rating. I thought of this as a steal when the draft came around. He was drafted in the 5th round. I thought he was a 3rd round grade. He hasn't shown anything special so far in his first 2 seasons, but still, he's still a very solid depth piece. He just doesn't do anything special. Very good injury support all around as well. And as I said, let's say a guy on the inside goes down. That's when you move Darnell Wright to the inside and you place Larry Borom at right tackle. After him is Lucas Patrick, who was awful last season. I'll be the first to say it. He was not good last year. It's deserving that he's sitting on the bench in this situation. He's still not the worst guy I've ever looked at, though. And then there's Ja'Tyre Carter, who is just injury support. He's likely not going to see a lot of time on the field. He is more towards the back of the depth chart on our lads, but I still like him. I had a draft grade on him, so still pretty solid. Outside of those guys, these guys did not contribute to the rating, but they're still on the team. We have Alex Leatherwood, Doug Kramer, Lorenz Metz, Dieter Eilson, Kellen Diesch, Josh Lugg, Roy Beteca, Robert Haskins, and Gabriel Howe. So that rounds out the offense, which again received a 73.86, which is 25th in the NFL, 12th in the NFC, and 3rd in the NFC North, only ahead of the Green Bay Packers. On offense, again, you saw by how many of those guys were young, how many of those guys, 2 of them had breakout grades. This offense has a lot of potential with Justin Fields at quarterback. I'm just not a big fan of Fields. I don't like him as a passer at all, so that's where the offensive rating kind of goes down. Nonetheless, still a lot of upside for that offense, and the defense still has upside. It's just not nearly as big as the other one, and that's because of that defensive line, which I'm going to get into right here, and it starts with the edge rushing group. So on the edge, we start with DeMarcus Walker, who happens to be the best defensive lineman on this team, and DeMarcus Walker's only a 73 overall. The thing with Walker is he's actually fairly solid. I just wouldn't have him as your best defensive lineman on your entire roster. Walker has yet to play 500 snaps in a single season, but he's shown several times that in like 400, 300 snaps, he can work really well. Last Last year, he was extremely efficient, showing 1 sack every 53 snaps and 1 pressure every 13 snaps. Good season in Tennessee, now he's in Chicago. Can he continue that success and efficiency while getting at least 800 snaps? After him, you have Rasheem Green, who is a 64 overall. He should not be the second best edge on any team. He's never been great. With there not being a lot to say about him, that's very concerning. And that's all I got to say about him. So it moves on to Dominique Robinson, who is the 3rd best edge on this team. And I had a mid-4th round grade on him. He went in the 5th round. And honestly, I loved him to start the season. I thought he was going to become one of the best defensive rookies in 2022. And then as the time went on, he started to have really bad weeks. And he's just been extremely inconsistent. He hasn't been efficient, especially in the back half of the season. He was not efficient at all, but still he's got solid injury support if he can replicate that early 2022 season. And then behind him, you have Trevis Gibson. He is extremely inconsistent, but he still brings that injury support to the team, and I'm losing faith in Gibson after last season. I had a late 3rd round grade on him, and he has not showed out really since he got that grade. But still, the Edges get a 66.38 overall. And the guys who did not contribute to the rating are rookies Jalen Harris and DeAnthony Jones. The interior defensive line is where we go next. The worst positional group on this team at a 65.32. The thing with the interior defensive line is it was my biggest need going into the draft, and they took 2 interior defensive linemen. They just both happen to be massive reaches, and I don't think they're going to work out. It starts with the 69 overall Andrew Billings, who they just picked up this season. He is a reliable backup, but he should not be a starter. Last season, he played with Las Vegas, and he had a very solid season. He was a good run defender, but he was just okay at everything else, so he should not be a starter for any team. The Bears just failed to complete that process by taking 2 starting worthy defensive tackles, so Andrew Billings is your interior D lineman 1. And Justin Jones is starting as well, in my opinion. He's the same thing as Billings. He should not be a starter by any means, but he's the complete opposite of Billings when you know he had an awful 2022 season. He had 1 run stop every 26.5 snaps, which is not good for an interior D lineman. When a majority of your runs are going to be up the middle, he's barely making those stops. So yeah, I don't think Justin Jones should be a starter in the NFL, but their 2 draft picks I don't think are going to live up to starting potential. It starts with Florida's Gervon Dexter Sr., who I thought was a massive reach for the 2nd round, as I said before, but he's got great measurables and upside, so I can somewhat understand the selection here. You just had so many better options at this position, and he had a 5th round grade, in my opinion. I don't think it was worth taking him in the 2nd round at all. Again, he's got good upside, but I say that because he's not disciplined. He does not have great technique, and he's apparently got work ethic concerns. So a lot of people are saying that potentially he may just be a bust right out of the gate. And I thought this was a massive reach, so we'll see how he pans out. And it continues on. You took Zach Pickens in the 3rd round. I had a 6th round grade on him. I'm not a fan of him at all. Sure, he may be injury support to start his career, especially noting that maybe next year the Bears take one of their 1st round picks and put it on an interior defensive lineman again. But Pickens is just super slow, and he's extremely ineffective in the pass rush. He does have a very solid bull rush, but he's just too slow for my liking. So as I said, the interior defensive line gets a 65.32. The guys who did not contribute being Jalen Holmes, Travis Bell, Andrew Brown, and Donovan Jeter. After interior defensive line, we go straight to the best positional group on this team, and that is with linebacker, which received a 74.38. Going into the draft, the biggest need was interior D-line. Going into the offseason, the biggest need was linebacker. And they have completely reformed this linebacker core, and it's so much better than it was before. They got 2 linebackers in free agency, and arguably the better one, in my opinion, is TJ Edwards from Philly. This was a fantastic pickup for Chicago on a very good deal. 3 years, $19.5 million, and he's arguably better than Edmonds, who received a 4-year, $72 million deal. TJ Edwards was a top 5 linebacker in 2022. I don't know if he's going to continue that this year, but last year he was absolutely elite. The issue is he's had only 1 elite season. The rest of the seasons were either just okay, or one of them was really good though. And I would put a breakout rating grade on TJ Edwards if he hasn't already broken out. I didn't think he was going to break out last year. He ended up breaking out, and this was a fantastic deal for Chicago. And now you got Tremaine Edmunds, who I have at a 79 overall, and I thought this was another really good pickup. I just thought the contract was a little bit not so team friendly. I thought Edmunds was just an okay linebacker. His rating dropped down all the way to a 68 going into the 2022 season, and then he had an elite year with Buffalo, so now he's up to a 79. He just took a massive leap forward in coverage. That's my biggest thing with the linebacker, is you have to be good at both run defense and coverage. He's okay in run defense, but he was terrible in coverage. But last season, he took massive jumps in coverage, and now he's actually one of the better coverage linebackers in the NFL, so good for him. And then you have your best linebacker going into the offseason on the roster, which is Jack Sanborn. I think Sanborn was an extremely underrated rookie last season, and for that reason, I have him as the number 3 breakout rating on this team, simply because he is starting, but he showed so much promise in his rookie season after going undrafted. He played in only 330 snaps, but in those 330 snaps, he was extremely effective as a pass rusher. He missed only 9.4% of his tackles, and he could improve in coverage, but still, he's bringing in some really good traits to Chicago, and he was undrafted last season. He's still a 66 overall. He wasn't elite as a linebacker last year, but still, it's very much worth noting that this guy could easily break out this upcoming season. And then after him, you have Noah Sewell. So Noah Sewell was a great pickup in the later rounds, in my opinion. Sewell is just an all-around high-motored linebacker with great talent in both the pass and the run. He does highly miss on athleticism, and he is not the prototypical linebacker you see in the NFL today. And then your linebacker 5 on this roster is Dylan Cole, who, yeah, he's not great. He does just provide injury support as a backup linebacker, and we haven't seen a good season out of Cole. He's just been consistently okay. Nonetheless, Cole is still a pretty good run defender, and as I said, I look for that in linebackers. So linebackers, the best positional group on this defense. The guys who did not contribute to the final rating were Terrell Lewis, Micah Baskerville, Sterling Weatherford, DeMarquise Gates, and Kwoni Dang. And now we move into the secondary, which in my opinion is a bit overrated given the talent that they have in there. And we're going to start with the cornerbacks here. Their best cornerback is a 72 overall, and it's Kyler Gordon. The reason he's a 72 overall is because I had a top 20 grade on him last year. He was a early second round grade, 74 overall to start his career, and he was not good last year. He allowed catches on 80% of his targets. He allowed 4 touchdowns, and his overall passer rating allowed last year was 110.8. We are probably going to see him stick strictly to the nickel corner position, but he's still a pretty solid tackler. So at least you have something, especially if you put him at nickel corner. He may be a little versatile to help out a lot in run support. And then after that is Jalen Johnson, who is another one of those kind of overrated cornerbacks in my opinion. The reason I say that is because I had an early second round grade on him, and he had a good early 2021 season, but since that early 2021, he's kind of just fell off. He missed well over 20% of his tackles in 2022 while allowing 60% of his catches. He was really bad in run support, not good in tackling, and coverage is good, which of course that's what you look for in a cornerback prospect, but that's all he has. So he's strictly a solid coverage corner. So hopefully Jalen Johnson can have a breakout 2023 season. He's going into the last year on his contract, so we'll see what Chicago does. I don't know if they're going to retain him or not, but you can just hope and pray that he has a good 2023. And then you selected a cornerback in this class with Tyreek Stevenson out of Miami, who, guess what? A second round talent. This time he did have a late second round talent on him. At this point, he was the second best cornerback on the board when they selected him. I thought it was a pretty good selection. He has elite measurables along with his athleticism is really nice, and he is one of the best press corners I've ever scouted. He easily gets up in their face, has really good play strength. Off the break in short routes, he's really good at keeping it covered. When it comes to the deep game, not so much. He's just not great outside of press coverage, so hopefully he can be utilized properly in Chicago's defense. And then the cornerback 4 on this roster, we go away from the 70s, we go all the way down to 61 overall, and Kindle Vildor. The thing with Vildor is Bears fans really do not like this guy. He's fine for me, and I say that because he's got awful in coverage, so I understand he's burnt toast. But in run support, he's actually very good. He's very solid in that range. He's a good tackler, and he should probably be a safety for that reason. And this is likely Vildor's last hurrah with Chicago. Fans are going to want him out. The team's probably going to want him out, but I still want to respect how good he is at run support. So the corners get a 70.5 overall. The guys who did not contribute to the rating is new pickup Michael Ojemudia, Josh Blackwell, rookie Terrell Smith, Jalen Jones, and Greg Stroman Jr. And rounding out the defense, we have the safety group receiving a 71.3 overall, being the second best group on the defense. Another one of these positional groups that I think is a little bit overrated, this time because of a lack of depth. It starts with Eddie Jackson, who a lot of people think is like a top 5 safety in the NFL, and I completely disagree. He has lost his elite touch a while ago. He's still a really good safety though, I'll be honest. Injuries have been getting in the way the last 2 seasons, so maybe that may contribute to the downfall. He's always been great at every aspect that a safety needs to be great at, and that is coverage, run defense, and open field tackling. He's been consistent, he's been good, he just has lost that elite level kind of play that we saw from him a few years back. And then after that, you have the second year Jaquan Brisker. I had an early 3rd round grade on him, which for comparison is a 69 overall. So when you're comparing that to his current 75 overall state, you know he had a really good rookie year. He showed flashes of heavy versatility in both positional and alignment versatility, and he's really good at holding receivers from getting yards after the catch. With that being said, Brisker is the 4th and final breakout grade that I have on a player. He may get into the 80s going into this season. He may pass Eddie Jackson in overall. And as I've been mentioning before, this team could be really good. A lot of players have high upside. I just don't know if all these players are going to live up to the upside. But as of right now, the team is still stuck at 30th because they don't have these guys who have already broken out outside of maybe TJ Edwards, Tremaine Edmonds, Eddie Jackson. A lot of these guys are unproven. Now the 2 backup safeties, which I said their depth is not great, and it starts with Adrian Colbert. The thing with Colbert is that he may not even be on the roster this upcoming season. I still have a 57 overall on him because he used to be a very reliable option, not so much anymore. He may be cut by season opener. He's been on and off practice squads the last couple of years, and he's just getting worse every season. So he could be down into maybe even in the 40s going into next year. And then after him, you have Elijah Hicks, who is a 55 overall. He was an undrafted free agent last season, and he did show good promise. It was kind of like Jack Sanborn, except we only saw 100 snaps out of Hicks and not 300 out of like we did out of Sanborn. Hicks is fantastic in run support, so if he gets more snaps here in 2023, we're going to want to see those continued successes in run support. So as I said, these safeties get a 71.3. The other players who did not contribute to the rating are AJ Thomas, rookie Kendall Williamson, rookie Mason Clark, and rookie Braylon Strahan. So the defense overall gets a 69.49, which is 30th in the NFL, which the 2 that are worse than them were the teams that came in 31st and 32nd. So yeah, defense does win championships, to be fair, but they did get 14th in the NFC and 4th in the NFC North for the defense. Now I'm going to move on to special teams here. So special teams only contributes to 16% of the final rating, and their special teams isn't great either. It starts with Cairo Santos, the kicker. He's the best player out of these 4 on the special teams. The problem with him is he missed way too many extra points in 2022. We know what he can do, but last year was a big setback in terms of extra points. And yes, Bears fans are traumatized by missed kicks. We aren't going to want to see that out of Cairo. Yet Santos does have really good efficiency and consistency for field goals, so that does help. Fans can stay hopeful that he sees more kicks for next year, as last year he only saw 23 field goals and 32 extra points. After that, you have punter Trenton Gill, who was a rookie out of the 7th round last year. I liked him-ish as a rookie. He just did what he needed to do his first year. He had 46 yards per attempt as a rookie punter. It's just, he wasn't elite by any means. He wasn't great by any means. He was just kind of that average punter, which all rookies that have draftable talent, which Trenton Gill did have draftable talent, they started at a 70 overall with some exceptions. Trenton Gill started at a 70 overall, Last year wasn't great. He's down to a 69, but he's still around that 70 range. What Gill can improve on is his punting in between the 20-yard line and the end zone. He did have a solid amount of inside 20-yard punts last year, but still, he has the distance. Now he needs to work on controlling that distance. And then your return people, you have Tyler Scott to start it off, who is a 70 overall. As I said, the rookies that I have draftable talents on here do start at 70. Tyler Scott's a rookie. He's the best option at kick returner. I think he's going to be a great kick returner. He starts at a 70. I mentioned this earlier. Tyler Scott does have extremely good speed and shiftiness. He's one of the big contributors to the Legion of Zoom, and he would work greatly as a new kick returner as he has more open space than he would at punt returner. So I would just try him out there and see if it works. You don't have a lot to lose on special teams. You already don't have a great special teams in the first place. So why don't you try out the inexperienced guy at kick returner and see what happens? Then after that, it's Dante Pettis, who is a punt returner, also a 70 overall. He's not a rookie though. What Pettis has over Tyler Scott for punt returner is he's better in enclosed spaces. He's a really good route runner, so punt returner does make sense overall for Dante Pettis. He's also got downfield speed, so that works as well. But Dante Pettis as a punt returner is actually pretty solid at finding ways to get yardage, even if there's not a lot of opportunities. He always fights for yardage in the first place. So the special teams doesn't take long to talk about. They get a 71.1 overall. They contribute to 16% of the overall rating, so 71.1 is 16% of the final rating. But overall, the special teams is not great anyways. It got a 71.1. The special teams is 22nd in the NFL, which is 13th in the NFC and 4th in the NFC North. And finally, we get into coaching. Coaching got a 75, and I've explained this in my other videos too. I'm going to explain it again. How coaching works is they are put on a 0 to 10 scale. If you have a 0 out of 10 coaching staff, you get a 70. If you have a 10 out of 10 coaching staff, you get an 80. So this coaching staff is a 5 out of 10. This 5 out of 10 is tied for 23rd in the NFL. The worst that anyone got was a 73. That is tied for 11th in the NFC and 4th in the NFC North. So we got to start with Matt Eberflus, which contributes to 50% of the coaching rating. I was not high on the Eberflus hire originally, and I'm still not high on him much at all. He is already on the hot seat, as they did have the worst record in the NFL on top of them having a first-year head coach. And a defensive-minded head coach should not lead a defense to being 29th in the NFL. It should at least be top 25, top 20, depending on how good your defense is. Sure, they don't have a lot of talent on that defense, but nonetheless, 29th in the NFL is still pretty lackluster when your head coach is a defensive-minded head coach. He does have another bad talent defense for 2023, but still, he should have that defense somewhere near the top 20. Nonetheless, I still do think that the Chicago Bears have potential with Matt Eberflus at head coach, so he's not a bad head coach by any means. I'm just not a big fan of him overall. As for the coordinators, the offensive coordinator is Luke Getsy, who got an A-, and I loved the hire of Luke Getsy last year, and I still do love him. He didn't really show improvements as an offensive coordinator last year, but still, he showed he can do his job. The play calling was a big improvement, as well as him manipulating the offensive best traits, aka Justin Fields rushing. That was a big improvement from when Matt Nagy was the head coach, and now you have Luke Getsy at offensive play caller. He's doing a better job than Nagy did. I still do like him, but still he has a bit to work on for next season. The team was not good on offense in terms of talent last year, and now you have more talent. You're giving Justin Fields better surround sound. You're giving him a better offensive line. So now you have stuff to work with. So this is big for Getsy this upcoming year. At defensive coordinator, it doesn't really matter much, but you do have Alan Williams, so I gave a C+. And I do understand that Alan Williams does not make play calls on defense, but I'm still not a fan of him. He's a big defensive backs guy. He was a D-backs coach for several teams early on into his coaching career. And yes, the safety group was okay. Eddie Jackson did have an improved season in 2022. Jaquan Brisker actually had a really good rookie season, but the cornerbacks extremely underperformed. Kyler Gordon was underperforming as a rookie. Jalen Johnson continues to kind of fall back, including in 2022. And now you have Tyreek Stevenson, who hopefully you can manipulate the fact that he's a good press corner, so press him more. Yes, defensive backs coach is a good idea for Williams, but I don't like the fact that he's the defensive coordinator of this team. So with that being said, I said before, the coaching got a 5 out of 10 on my rating scale, which translates to a 75 out of 80, which comes in tied for 23rd in the NFL, tied for 11th in the NFC, and dead last in the NFC North. So that is the Chicago Bears for you. The Chicago Bears came out at a 73.86 on offense, 69.49 on defense, 71.1 on special teams, and 75 on coaching. That translates to a 72.6 overall, which is 0.4 better than the Arizona Cardinals in 31st, and a bit better than the Los Angeles Rams in 32nd. If you guys want to watch those videos, I do have a playlist linked in the description where all of my ranking videos are going to go. But nonetheless, this team does come out as the 30th best team in the NFL, 14th best team in the NFC, and 4th best team in the NFC North. So that wraps up this video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As I said before, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel as well while you're at it. As I said, I have 29 more teams to power rank, so we still got ways to go. Tune in to see where all these other teams are going to end up. But once again, I'm Chase Keller from Chase Keller Journalism, and thank you guys so much for choosing this channel as your source of sports coverage. I'll see you guys in the next one.